In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to design new primers for a cloning project in Benchling. Just keep in mind that this is really just for your reference, as you don't actually need to do this for assignment 2. You can use this for the primer design question in assignment 2. However, if you do so, just keep in mind that you should also know how to do this manually, as you won't have access to Benchling on your term exam. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using the F1HB gene from Salmonella as an example sequence, and the NHE1 and EcoR1 restriction sequences to clone into the PET28A plasmid. So here I have my gene sequence imported, the start and stop codons have been annotated, and I'm ready to design primers. So I'm going to go use the primer tool here, create primers. I'm going to use the manual creation tool, and I actually want to create a primer pair because we're making forward and reverse primers. So the first thing I can do is select 20 base pairs downstream of my start codon, and then I'm going to set from selection, select forward. This is my forward primer, and that brings up the sequence here, including the melting temperature and the GC content. So already there's a couple issues here. First of all, I want a 3' GC clamp. So let's move that 3' edge over. And then when I do that, actually, it increases the GC content by quite a bit. So let's see if we can find a more suitable primer here. I can try shifting this down. And that actually has my 3' clamp and also a reasonable GC content. So I'm going to go with that one. Next, I need to add my restriction sequence. So remember that NHE1 was the upstream sequence in my plasmid. So I'm going to put that sequence on my forward primer. And I can do that just by searching here for the sequence and copy and paste that into my sequence bar. Then I need to add a few additional nucleotides on the 5' end, and I'm going to increase my overhang to include all of the nucleotides up to that complementary sequence there. Okay, now I'm going to work on my reverse primer. So I'm just going to start at the end of the gene and select about 20 base pairs up. I'm going to make sure I have a G or C clamp on the 3' end, and then set from selection, reverse. And I can see that this gives me a melting temperature of 56. That's within about 3 degrees of my forward primer, and I've got a 50% GC content. So that's looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the forward primer to add the EcoR1 sequence and add it to the 5' end of my sequence, and then once again I need to add a couple of base pairs, or a few base pairs, to the 5' end and indicate the overhang length there. Okay, now I'm just going to give this a name. Make sure I save them to the appropriate folder. I actually have to select that project and then select the folder and save the primer pair.